Before I do that, I wanted to share with you the water signs and the houses that are associated with that is the 4th, the 8th, and the 12th. So they're always trying to each other. Water is always trying to each other. So they make good aspects. But the point being, these houses deal a lot with, 4th house deals with, we say, the birth and the death. But the 8th house does as well. The 8th house is also Pluto rule, which is rebirth, regeneration, it's death and rebirth. This house here is said to rule old age and birth. It's kind of funny because when people get very old, very often they become kind of infantile again, childlike, second childhood or whatever they call it, I don't know what they call it. But so that all is 4th house stuff. So whenever somebody's asking you something about birth, where are you going to go? 4th house, right? So we have a problem with the birth, so we know that, so what are we going to expect to find there? Anybody have an idea?
Saturn, Pluto, Mars.
Good, Saturn is the main one. Now, in her chart, she's got Saturn in the 4th in Capricorn, but it's in this house, and the 4th house rules childbirth, and it's doing what? It's squaring what? 25 Capricorn squaring what?
The moon.
The moon. So we got two indicators here. We got the moon, 4th house. Remember I said find 2 or 3 things. You want to find more than one thing to establish something in law. In this case, Saturn is squaring the moon, and the interesting thing about Saturn in the 4th, it produces what? Blockages, obstacles. We call it the planet of the stumbling stone that makes things difficult, hard to do. And you were born what kind of birth?
Breech birth. So
Which means
I
what?
was born feet first.
Feet first, okay. So also the mother would have been afflicted under this birth, under your birth. And we would say of Saturn, we say what? Hard? Hard? Is Saturn hard? Rocks, crystallized, mineral. In other words, an obstacle to the birth is occurring. Now, if you ask your mother what kind of childbirth was it, what would she say?
It was very, very difficult, very long.
Of long duration, that sounds like Saturn?
And she was put on kind of unconscious in order to give birth.
To give birth. That's amazing
Yeah.
because they don't usually do that.
Well, I guess in those days
Years
they
ago.
were more.
And they do?
Years ago.
Oh, years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, now they usually want you to be awake. But anyway, so the other aspect that's interesting in this chart is Mars and the Sun are squaring Pluto and Uranus. And she said her arms were not working. That's kind of interesting because the 3rd house rules Gemini and the arms and the hands. And these 2 planets, Mars, remember I told you earlier? I said my problems in my life have been muscular things, connective tissue, things like that. And not so much broken, not broken bones so much, but this has been paramount to me. And in this case, it's squaring Pluto, and Pluto rules also, remember, birth, childbirth. Pluto rules that just as much as the 4th house, the moon, the mother, and all that stuff. So, and Mars and the Sun are both squaring that, Pluto and Uranus. Uranus is considered unique or unusual. We don't understand it very often, things that happen with Uranus. It's a planet of the unexpected, okay? So I have a feeling this is somehow related, the Mars square Pluto particularly, and Uranus is somehow related to some type of potential injury to the nervous system. Uranus rules that.
I'm just looking at it thinking it's interesting that these 3 sets of aspects are in 2s. They're all conjunctions. There's the conjunction between Pluto and Uranus. There's a conjunction between Sun and Mars, and then there's a conjunction between Saturn and Jupiter,
Yeah.
which are all part of what you're talking about.
Yeah, there's probably a lot more there that I'm not seeing, but Saturn alone, just being in the 4th house squaring the moon, would be the most indicative of a hard birth. Okay. Also, remember we were talking about Saturn squaring the moon earlier. What did I say that causes? In life, not at birth. What did I say?
Impatience.
What was it?
Impatience.
Good, but who are the parents in this? Saturn, mother, father? And what is happening with Saturn in this chart is squaring the moon, which means that the discipline, because this is Saturn in Capricorn, very strict. Okay, Saturn is in its own power. And it's squaring the moon in Aries, which means that the mother suffers a lot because of this discipline from the father, and the child as well, because this is not only the mother, but it's the formative age of the child. So you would have likely been under extraordinary duress during your life based upon the father's demands of discipline.
I absolutely was.
Can I ask you what it was particularly that his manners?
When you were talking about it earlier, I was thinking, my God, that describes my father exactly. I'm a bookkeeper, okay? I work with numbers. My father taught me math by basically terrorizing me and threatening me to learn the multiplication tables, et cetera, or else. He was violent, and he was full of anger and scary, and that's how I learned to count.
It's the kind of energy that comes from a moon square sun, moon square Saturn rather, is especially to the formative age of the child, because that's your formative years. It's the early childhood. And the emotional damage that can be produced by this, because moon in her chart is in Aries, which means there's a lot of emotional conflict in her. You grew up with it, you've fought it all your life, I'm sure. There's more here I see that I wouldn't, it's not for the group, but I mean, I know there's more here. But the point being that there's so much going on here. First of all, Mars conjunct the Sun is really powerful. It's not a bad aspect in one's chart. Remember I told you Jerome Cardan in the 1500s wrote 100 aphorisms about astrology, and one of them was, a woman who has Mars with the Sun, I will warrant her. In other words, I will warrant her. I would give her money, I would back her. I know she's going to be good investment. In other words, warrant her. So he considered that to be one of the best aspects a woman can have in a chart. Although we look at it and we see, wow, what a fighting spirit too, right? Are we talking Mars, fighting, Sun, what? Spirit. So this is kind of an indomitable spirit as well. It's hard. If she was if she took up a martial art or something, she would be good, even though you wouldn't look at her and think that. But because her spirit is very powerful, and she would be her strong will is another thing about that. What is the will? The Sun. What's Mars? Strong, right? The fact that it squares Pluto and Uranus, means there's been issues in your life that have been traumatic. Okay, I know that. And we're not going there, but I know what areas of your life have been involved. The thing is that you also have Venus conjunct Neptune and Mercury, all in a conjunction. She's got an amazing chart of constellations, joined planets together. And Venus conjunct Neptune, Venus rules attraction and love. Neptune rules illusions. Okay? Means that there's a tendency to have a dreamlike vision of who that person is out there for you that may not even come anywhere near reality. It can be delusional in that sense. Okay, I don't mean to be hard on you, but
That's okay. I have ideas about that too. About my dreams of doing my aromatherapy and stuff. Aromatherapy deals with essential oils, which are liquids, which is very Neptunian.
Very good.
And it's beauty also, which has the Venus thing going on. And I used to sing, and so that could be the Mercury too. So.
Well, Venus conjunct Mercury has a beautiful voice.
Right.
And I happen to know that because I've got your album. She's got an exquisite voice. She could have been a recording lady in that sense. But this is really powerful. Just this whole constellium, Mercury, Venus, and Neptune. It sends. Here's the thing. The thing with this is all her second house. This is money. Second house. What you want to do for a living. And what she wants to do for a living is not always realistic, because Neptune means you can delude yourself easy. Okay? Venus is in that house, which is in Scorpio. Mercury, all the things that you're involved in and wanting to do to make a living are very much what you're doing in this answering herbals. You know what I mean? All the things that you're involved in very much involves this.
Well, I have a question about that though. It's in the house of money.
You read my mind. I didn't want to do that. Then.
It's in the house of money and possessions, but it's not in the house of profession.
No, but that's not what your house of profession is right up here. It's ruled by Gemini and Cancer. You notice she has Cancer intercepted. That's called interception. I don't think we ever talked about that in class. An intercepted sign is one that takes up that whole sign, and there's another 3 degrees of Gemini up here, and then there's maybe 1 degree on this side. But Cancer is the basic one, but on the cusp of that 10th house is Gemini. And Gemini rules career and work, but we have Cancer there and we have Gemini. That means it's kind of interesting because Gemini is making money through your mind, through anything to do with, could be writing, could be anything to do with that. But it also Cancer's in there, which is kind of like the mother. And that is also the nurturer. And a lot of the work you're trying to do is basically nurture. Huh?
The aunt.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you name yourself Aunt Serene. All that fits this, But, and the ruler of Gemini is what? Is Mercury down here in the 2nd house. So your career would tend to involve something that brings you money that would be something to do with your education, which is Gemini. But your Cancer in here is ruled by the moon. And it's squaring Saturn, which means that the emotional need and your career that involves what you feel like doing, which is the moon, Cancer, is at odds with what? Saturn. Okay, so you keep running up against obstacles in your pursuit of that particular career. And I've watched you do that. I know that's an absolute error.
Yeah.
But anyway, so when you're reading charts, one of the things you're going to do, you're going to get questions. Somebody's going to ask you about career, work, marriage. Where are you going to go for marriage in a chart? Where would you go?
7.
7. What rules that cusp?
Pisces.
Good, Pisces. And what is Pisces doing? Ruler is where?
The 5th? Oh, Neptune. I was
Yeah.
looking at Jupiter.
Yeah, well, it's basically Neptune, and it's conjunct these in this constellium of Venus and Mercury. The thing about that is, if there tends to be anybody that has Venus conjunct Neptune, this is squaring off to Jupiter over here. It's a wide orb, but it's there. This would be 8 degrees between these, so Jupiter's squaring it. And since this is a conjunction, these would tend to pull into this Saturn as well. Anybody has Neptune conjunct Venus tends to attract very karmic relationships, past life things, which is Neptunian. It's very often betrayal from Neptune. Neptune can be that. It can be deceit and betrayal because Neptune rules what? Things behind you that you can't see. And so it also can mean that you can delude yourself easily in your relationships. You're not always, how do I say, maybe when you're younger particularly, you get wiser as we get older, okay? But you could have easily been very vulnerable to betrayal and to duplicity and kind of deception. That's what Neptune can be with Venus. And
That's
so,
opposite the moon.
huh?
That's opposite the moon.
Venus?
That's very wide.
No, it's not opposition. This would be an opposition up here in Taurus.
Oh.
This is in Aries. But It's, you know, it's hard to read charts in groups, you know, and sometimes in group, I don't want to get too personal with it. But I think what we see is this here, Venus conjunct Neptune and Mercury. It's such a close conjunction that you will tend to attract very, very strong karmic relationships, and also people that have strong beliefs, because Neptune is I believe, right? Conjunct Venus, which is relationship. And that may also draw you to somebody, because you're looking for somebody. When anybody's got Venus with Neptune, they're looking for somebody that has beliefs similar to theirs. That sounds silly, but you'd say everybody's like that. You know, but I mean, people could marry a person with another faith and be happy together, even though they don't believe the same things. A Protestant can marry a Catholic and they can live happily ever after, even though they don't subscribe to the same belief systems. In your case, Venus with Neptune is seeking someone of like mind and spirit in terms of beliefs. You know, so that's very important to you. It's not just a relationship. So,
Or it could also mean someone who tries to be the savior to the person that they're involved with. Like, I can make you better.
oh, how beautiful. Listen to this.
Well, I've been there.
Wait, from which
Yeah,
side?
Either one.
That I would be
Why-
the savior,
tell-
or that he would be the savior?
No,
No, you would want to be the savior, maybe. The reason being, she's right on, because we tend to miss that aspect of Neptune. It's Jesus sign, Pisces, Neptune, and all that. So I think that's very astute and very right. So what else? Anybody want to make a comment about anything else I see up here? Too much Greek for you? Too much aspect? Okay. I mean, I absolutely know more than I can talk about up here, because I happen to have looked at this chart before. Okay, so let's let that go. Does anybody have any particular questions or comments or directions that you wish we had covered if we did?
I didn't understand, you said Pluto has something to do with childbirth, right?
It does. Pluto rules death and rebirth, or childbirth itself. Even though we generally look at what? We look at Cancer and the moon and all that. But much more is, I mean, I remember, I've seen charts with moon Pluto afflictions. And I remember the class we were doing in Boston, and I said to the woman, I said, something happened to you in a childbirth that might have been close to death. And she just freaked out. She says, my God, she says, I'd actually died in childbirth. And the priest came to give me last rites, and he started talking to me, telling me to wake up. He didn't want me to leave. He says, you know, you got to come back. And she said, I did. But it actually happened. She had a death experience. Because Pluto can rule both, you know. In the older days, a lot of women died in
As I
childbirth.
was going to say, it could have been that the mother died.
Yeah.
Well, they thought I was gonna die.
Yeah, I
They
wish.
thought I was gonna die. I was in the hospital a long time before I was able to go home, because I couldn't move my arms. They thought something was terribly wrong with me.
Did they ever determine what it was?
No. All of a sudden, I was okay. My mother was really pissed that they, you know, put her through that.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know.
It's funny because you've got the Uranus conjunct what?
Pluto,
Right. And you almost died, right? Pluto, right?
right.
And Uranus is what? Sudden unexpected things.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah.
All of a sudden you said I was okay, right? I mean, that sounds like Uranus, doesn't
That's
it?
true, that's true.
You know, and I've been given up for dead, or lifeless arms, or whatever. But anybody have something else about their own charts they want me to look at? I'm willing to do that. We got another.
I want to talk about my Venus.
All right, your Venus.
Because, let's see, I have a couple of squares that are kind of concerning. Like, I have Venus in the 12th house in Libra, and it's square Saturn, and it's square Jupiter.
Let me see if your chart's in here real quick, and we'll
Okay.
pull it up. I might have it in this computer because
It doesn't show it here.
let me look real quick. Okay.
Maybe that
I'm
has
gonna
something
put
to
it
do
down
with
here,
it.
that's the best. Okay, file, open, recent. There you are. You can plug it in.
Somehow, like, the chart that you gave me, it doesn't show a couple of the squares that I have on a different program.
Okay, we'll look at it.
Yeah.
And we'll see. It should pop up here in a minute. Okay. There it is. That you?
That's me.
Okay. All right, so you've got Venus in the 12th in Libra, and it's squaring down here. It's 14, squaring Neptune and Saturn, and tends to pull in this constellium because they're all pulled in together.
Right.
So, and then it's also affecting Jupiter up here.
Yeah.
So you got a T-cross,
Yeah.
and you got Saturn opposing Jupiter, squaring Venus. Yeah, you got me in a corner, you know that, don't you? You got me in a place I don't want to be.
I'm curious about, you know how we said 12th house can represent past karma and such?
Yes, very much so, yeah.
Since my Venus has squares only, and it's in the 12th house, I'm curious, like, what could that mean?
Well, first of all, let me just say, Venus squaring Jupiter, okay? I was born with that. It gives a lot of relationships, quite frankly. An abundance of relationships, okay? Shame on you, girl. Yeah, shame on me, shame on me. Okay, I won't even go on that, but this is what Jupiter does. Remember, Jupiter is what? Abundance of something. So whenever it afflicts them. It also can bring abundance of something else. What do you think that would be?
Money?
Good, boy, you're right on. Well, it's Venus. It's not only relationships, but it can be that. But because Saturn's involved in this, guess what? You kind of got a seesaw going here. You tend towards, you know, remember I told you Saturn, Jupiter afflictions are what? How many of you remember what I told you about that?
Past and future.
Well, yeah. But what does the consciousness create in the consciousness?
Is the
Extremes of what?
mood?
Wanting freedom and,
Good.
For me,
Optimism,
yeah,
Jupiter.
optimism,
Pessimism,
depression.
Saturn. Good for you, yeah. The opposite, you tend to go through these manic depressives almost.
Yeah,
Am I right?
yeah.
And the reason is because there's such extreme pull there between the past and your sense of non-worth, forgive me. You know, you look at yourself some days and hate yourself, and yet you're beautiful, but yet you do that. And yet some days you look at yourself and I'm the queen of the world. You understand what I'm getting at?
Yeah.
So these extremes are going on in her life a lot. And because Saturn's saying I'm not, and Jupiter's saying you sure the hell are. So you know, and so you walk out one day and you're knocking everybody off their socks. Look at this lady, will you? But the bottom line is you got a struggle that's going on, nobody knows about it because you keep it to yourself and you can internalize it all. The other side of that is this tends to also afflict your life and your relationships. I mean, Venus is powerful in your chart. Venus is rising in the east, right off the ascendant here. You know, I mean, it's sure, this is 3 Scorpio and this is 14 Libra. That's a lot of degrees apart. It's what? That's 16 and 17, 19 degrees off the ascendant. But whenever you have Venus rising in the chart, it gives good. It gives beauty. It gives a very pleasing, form, the body, the way you look. I was blessed with Venus rising in the chart. I'm not that great looking, but I've always had a good appearance. I've had a good balance until this got in the way. I've had a good balance and a good sense of proportion. You know, when I was in Boston, I went to a doctor and I was on a table. He said, "You have such beautiful feet."
Oh my God.
I said, "You're not going to do one of those things on me. You're not going to be checking me down there, are you?" You know, he was obviously, I thought he was gay, but I mean, he has these beautiful feet. I thought that's a new one for me. Anyway, whatever. So, you know, this gives beauty of form rising in the east. Anytime you got a Venus. If you have Saturn there rising, it can give deformity sometimes, or it can give appearance that is kind of very dark and, I don't know, how would you describe it? just not right. That's how I can say it. It's a hard one to have, rising in a chart. You have it there sometimes. It can give shortness in stature and a lot of other things. But this chart is really powerful in the fact that you have Jupiter in the midheaven, right up here is close. Your moon up here is very high. All these planets, Sun conjunct Mars. Here's another Sun conjunct Mars. Who, remember?
Yeah.
We just talked about
Yeah.
that. Very powerful, good position. The reason is the Sun is the will. The Sun is your life. Mars is what? Your drives, your ambitions, the drive to do something, achieve something in life. You both have that very strong, you know, and you will tend to accomplish things in your life by your pure force of will. Force, Mars, will, Sun. You see, when you're talking to a client, that's what you're doing. You're speaking the language of these stars. You're speaking the language of these planets. So when you're looking at a chart, you shouldn't be confused. Say, force of will. Make sense? Force of will. Okay? Moon in Virgo, right in the 10th house. The other side with that is that you could be very successful in working with the public on any level. Moon in the 10th usually achieves good things in terms of the public. 10th house is career, work. The moon is the public. It's the masses, the people. What's that lady that went to jail that has the big...
Martha Stewart?
Martha Stewart. She had that moon in 10th. You know, ability to... Huh?
No, the way you said it was funny. Who's the lady who went to jail?
And it's even funnier that you knew who I was talking about. Oh, man. It's real psychic of you. Anyway, but because this is not only the 10th of career, but it's the sign of work, Virgo, and the moon means you do best working in the public, somehow working with the public. You probably know that already. I don't know what you do, but you know that's what you should be doing. The moon is also, let's see, 1 degree. Okay. And you have Jupiter in Cancer. Did you know that that's his exaltation sign?
Yeah.
Very powerful. You know, you're going to be very blessed in life, okay? You'll have great things happen to you in your life. And particularly as a mother, you're going to be an extraordinary woman when it comes to being a mother, because that's Jupiter is the grandmother. What grand, I don't mean grandmother like, I mean great mother, how's that, okay? So, because that's Cancer. And so, anyway, it's a powerful chart, very powerful.
I also wanted to ask about Pluto, first house. I mean, I know Pluto is one of the outer planets, but since having a planet in the first house, does that count as something significant in a person's chart?
Well, it's making a perfect trine to Jupiter for one. It's not afflicting anything down here. It's not making afflictions, 12 Scorpio. If you had something up here in Leo afflicting, it would be, but it's not. So there's really good aspects to that planet. Pluto is also rising in the east. Very powerful planet. It's an earth mover, it's a shaker, it's somebody that gets a lot done. And it can be kind of unstoppable. Okay, that's I am, right? Pluto is this transformer. Remember I told you Pluto or Scorpio rising can do the same thing. It's said to be like a caterpillar to the butterfly. You know, all of a sudden she blossoms and say, wow, where'd this lady come from? You know, you may have been